Political Commission of the Legislative Assembly of El Salvador has condemned the armed attack on members of the Farabundo Martin National Liberation Front. In Haiti, labor unions and social movements launched a general strike this Monday, while President Jovenel Moïse has said he will continue in power until 2022. Phase 2 clinical trials of the Cuban Covid-19 vaccine candidate named Abdala began this Monday. From the headquarters of teleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm Gladys Quesada. In El Salvador, the Political Commission of the Legislative Assembly approved a statement on the attack perpetrated this Sunday against members of the Farabundo Martin National Liberation Front. The president of the Political Commission, Mario Ponce, called an emergency meeting to discuss the attack suffered by members of the front who were participating in a party activity, in which 2 members were killed and 3 more injured. The lawmakers of said commission approved a move to issue an official statement in Wednesday's plenary session, which, besides strongly condemning the violent acts against the FMLN, calls on the Attorney General to carry out an exhaustive investigation to find those responsible for the attack. In addition, almost 3 weeks before the legislative and municipal elections, lawmakers call on the OAS and the European Union to bring forward the arrival of the election observers. In El Salvador, the coordinator of the parliamentary group and member of the Political Commission of the Farabundo Martin National Liberation Front, Nidia Diaz, denounced an armed attack against the party's caravan that took place on Sunday in the framework of the campaign for the legislative and municipal elections.
When the leading truck of the caravan, with sound and everything, moved towards the center, a few meters away from our facilities in the capital, a vehicle intervened and wouldn't let the truck pass, and 3 armed men got out. 2 of them shot at it. They lifted the banner of the deputies and immediately began shooting at the back of the truck, where all of our comrades were duly identified with their flags, their colors, and it was there where 4 comrades were seriously wounded. And another was grazed, and after they finished shooting, they simply got back into the car.
The coordinator of the parliamentary group publicly blamed President Nayib Bukele and his vice president for inciting the hatred and violence that resulted in the attack against the FMLN caravan, in which 2 of the wounded died.
I want to make it clear that this is the result of hatred, intolerance, and incitement to violence by the President of the Republic, Nayib Bukele. We hold him responsible and his Vice President, Felix Ulloa, who yesterday in an act said that this was a new war that had begun on February 30th, 2019, with new actors. That is a call to what? When one speaks of the concept of war, one speaks of intolerance.
During an interview with journalist Breno Altman, the president of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro Moros, announced that the vaccination process against COVID-19 will begin in February.
Vaccines are about to arrive. I estimated last year that the truly massive vaccination was going to take place in April, because with our analysis and scientific specialists, they told us that something like what is currently happening was going to happen, that there is no production capability of any vaccine at the necessary level in the world, and that what was going to happen was the hoarding of the vaccine by the North, and that is how it has been. 10 countries hoard 95% of the vaccines in the world. So in February, we should start a growing vaccination, and by April, there will be a massive vaccination.
In Ecuador, with just a few days to go before the general elections, leaders of the Citizens' Revolution have denounced that foreign media are conducting a smear campaign against the presidential candidate of the Union for Hope coalition, Andrés Araúz. According to the movement, this media campaign seeks to discredit the leader and to prevent his participation in the upcoming presidential election of February the 7th. The Union for Hope coalition denounced the attempts to implicate the candidate in alleged irregular financing of his campaign. In this regard, several Latin American leaders have raised their voices to reject this latest attempt of the Ecuadorian opposition to push for the suspension of the general elections to be held on Sunday. Ecuadorian lawmakers are requesting the impeachment of Health Minister Juan Carlos Ceballos for alleged influence peddling and failure to comply with the COVID-19 vaccination plan. A total of 38 Ecuadorian parliamentarians representing a quarter of the National Assembly have requested that the minister to be subjected to an impeachment trial, a week after the plenary approved a resolution for President Lenín Moreno to remove him from office. In view of the official's refusal to resign, lawmaker Ángel Simalesa made official on Monday the presentation of the request for impeachment against Ceballos for breach of duty, with 38 signatures in support. And we'll go now to a short break. Follow us on Twitter at teleSUR English and also Gladys teleSUR. In the United States, people began receiving vaccinations against COVID-19 at Gillette Stadium in Foxborough, Massachusetts, as Phase 2 of vaccination was launched across the state, expanding access from frontline workers to people aged 75 and above.
It's so well organized that I'm glad I came here. I could have had an appointment in 2 weeks at some school up in Framingham, but my daughter persevered. She was able, she kept trying. She spent a lot of hours on a computer to get this appointment. Cool. But I'm very happy to get vaccinated. Looking forward to this for a long time.
I was anxious this morning about driving here and everything, but it went much more smoothly than I anticipated. The line was very long, but it moved right along. So my appointment was at 10:24. I think I received my shot at 10:41.
And Austria will start relaxing its third coronavirus lockdown from February the 8th, as announced on Monday by Chancellor Sebastian Kurz, with schools, museums and shops set to reopen. Services such as hairdressers and beauticians will also be allowed to reopen, but customers will have to show proof of a negative coronavirus test. Meetings of people from more than 2 households will once again be allowed, but the Chancellor pled for social contacts to be kept to a minimum. He said the government will reassess the situation in 2 weeks to see if it will be possible to reopen restaurants and cafes or restaurant cultural events. But they warned that the government could also reintroduce restrictions if infections numbers begin to rise. One of the few exceptions to the wide-ranging shutdown in recent weeks has been ski resorts, which have stayed open for local visitors despite several reported outbreaks. While the country was spared by the first wave of the pandemic, it has been hard hit by the second and has suffered more than 7,800 COVID-19 deaths.
The ideal scenario of a 7-day incidence of around 50 cases per 100,000 inhabitants, or in other words, 700 infections per day. We are rather around 1,000 to 1,500 infections per day. We have therefore unanimously decided, together with all religions and the government, to take cautious, easing measures, but at the same time to introduce additional security and hardening measures.
German Chancellor Angela Merkel has sought to defend the European Union's trial vaccine drive, arguing that the rollout had got off to a slower start than in some other countries for good reasons. She also claimed that based on the current supply commitments of vaccine manufacturers, every citizen will be offered a vaccination in Germany by the end of the summer.
Cases and the figures could be given by the Ministry of Health if they are not already available. We can say that our pledge that we will be able to offer vaccine to every citizen by the end of the third quarter still stands. The European Union has been negotiating for a very long time on the issue of liability and to bring all the responsibility to the political level and not to leave some of it to the manufacturers is a decision for which the European Union fought for a long time.
Emirates airline announced Monday it will make daily deliveries of coronavirus vaccines to countries with low storage capacities as part of an initiative to accelerate global jab distribution. The Dubai-based company, flag carrier of the United Arab Emirates and the largest in the Middle East, will use both its cargo and passenger fleets to deliver vaccines to countries without the means to stockpile vaccines, according to the deputy head of its cargo division. Dubai, a key transport hub, announced the initiative on Sunday to accelerate the delivery of coronavirus vaccines, particularly to developing nations after the World Health Organization warned against abandoning the world's poor. The alliance will see joint efforts between pharmaceutical manufacturers, forwarders, and government agencies to transport vaccines, some of which have to be kept at very cold temperatures.
No doubt that this initiative will play a major role in delivering vaccines in an urgent and safe manner, and the role of Emirates Airline during the next stage will be a fundamental role in activating this issue in a safe manner. The problem that we face in most countries of the world today is the lack of capabilities to store these vaccines in a safe way, and therefore storing them here in Dubai and re-exporting them to other countries in small quantities is the best way that we have found to transport vaccines to most countries in a safe manner.
South African President Cyril Ramaphosa on Monday said the country had passed the peak of its second wave of the coronavirus pandemic, allowing for the easing of restrictions ahead of the country's first vaccinations this month, after receiving the first batch of doses this Monday.
In fact, the average rate of new infections has been steadily coming down over the last 3 weeks, indicating that we have now passed the peak of the second wave. The hours of the curfew will now be from 11 p.m. to 4 a.m. Establishments where people go for either entertainment or otherwise will need to close by 10 p.m. so as to allow their customers and staff to return home by curfew time commencing.
And we have more news coming up after a final short break, so stay with us.
Para mantenerme saludable, yo corro.
To keep myself healthy, I study.
Για να διατηρηθώ υγιής, τρέφομαι σωστά.
Para mantenerme saludable, yo bailo.
Para mantenerme saludable, yo purifico mi espíritu a través del cuerpo. ¿Y tú?
Guide your body. Tuesdays, only on teleSUR. teleSUR English presents a weekly program to discuss the political, economic and social issues affecting the Caribbean community. We'll challenge stereotypes and unpack the diversity of the region through the analysis of unique cultures, religions and art. We Caribbean. Wednesdays, only on teleSUR.
Welcome back. In Cuba, phase 2 clinical trials of the vaccine candidate named Abdala have begun as part of the campaign to produce vaccines to combat the spread of COVID-19. The second phase of the clinical trials of the vaccine candidate produced by the Center of Genetic Engineering and Biotechnology started this Monday at the Saturnino Lora Provincial Hospital in the city of Santiago de Cuba. Almost 800 volunteers aged between 19 and 80 years old who are healthy or have compensated diseases will be part of the study that in the first stage revealed a positive immune response. The trial constitutes one more step in the national strategy of the BioCuba Pharma Businesses Group faced with COVID-19 with a view to immunizing all Cubans against the virus this year. And Pakistan on Monday officially received a batch of COVID-19 vaccines donated by China at the Nor Khan Air Base near the country's capital, Islamabad, making Pakistan the first country to receive donated COVID-19 vaccines from the Chinese government. At the handover ceremony, Pakistani Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi expressed his gratitude to the people and the government of China for helping the country in its hour of need and making Pakistan the first country in the world to receive COVID-19 vaccines donated by Chinese government. Meanwhile, the Chinese ambassador to the country, Nong Rong, said that sending the vaccines demonstrated the Iron brotherhood between the two countries, adding that China has honored its commitment to making Chinese COVID-19 vaccines global public goods. In an unexpected comment on Monday, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan spoke of the need to draft a new and civilian constitution for Turkey. During a televised speech following a cabinet meeting, Erdogan recalled that the country's last two constitutions, enacted in 1961 and 1982, were drafted following military groups. The president also said that he would discuss the issue with his party's nationalist allies. In 2018, Turkey transitioned from a parliamentary system to an executive presidential system that concentrated most powers in the hands of the president. The transition came following a referendum that amended several articles of the 1982 constitution.
Work needs to be conducted before the eyes of the people and with the participation of all of their representatives in a transparent manner. In the event that we reach a common understanding within the People's Alliance, we can take action towards a new constitution in the period ahead.
Agricultural union leaders in India announced a new day of protests on February the 6th, including a 3-hour musical jam to protest against the new agricultural laws imposed by the government. Farmers continued their demonstrations on the outskirts of the capital, New Delhi, against the laws. Union leaders on Monday announced a nationwide Chakka Jam for 3 hours on February the 6th, when they will move to block state and national highways. Farmers held a one-day fast on January 30th and a tractor parade before in Delhi on January 26th. So far, the government has made no progress in the talks with the farmers' representatives to reach a satisfactory agreement on the 3 new agricultural laws. Nearly 14 people were killed and wounded this weekend in the northern and northeastern regions of Syria as a result of criminal acts that Damascus denounces were perpetrated by terrorist gangs and Kurdish separatist militias in the service of the United States. We have more details in the following report by our correspondent Hisham Wanos.
More than 100 Syrians mobilized to demand the lifting of the siege imposed against them by the so-called Syrian Democratic Forces. In order to stop the protests, the US-backed mercenaries opened fire on the demonstrators, killing 1 civilian and wounding 3 others.
Opening fire on demonstrators and causing the death and injury of defenseless civilians is strong evidence that these militia are committing terrorist acts orchestrated by their US sponsors in order to pressure the Syrian government and people with just a few months to go before the presidential elections, in order to prevent the success of these elections and to spread chaos in this region and throughout the country.
In addition to the attacking, the demonstrators who rose up against the siege that for almost 3 weeks has left them without water, electricity and foodstuffs, the Kurdish separatist militias proceed to kidnap several civilians, taking them to an unknown destination. Meanwhile, on the same day, at least 30 people, including 3 children, were killed and wounded in a car bomb explosion in the town of Afrin, in the northwestern countryside of the neighboring province of Aleppo.
Both the Kurdish separatist militias and terrorist groups are fulfilling the agenda of their foreign sponsors, and increasing their criminal acts against the inhabitants of the areas under their control, in an attempt to extort money from the Syrian state and force it to offer political concessions, especially before the constitutional Syrian compromise of the upcoming presidential elections is fulfilled.
At the same time, in addition to promoting terrorist attacks in Aleppo and supporting the siege of al-Hasaka, Washington continues its attempts to revive Daesh, or the Islamic State, as well as the looting of Syrian oil, gas and agricultural products, and tightens the coercive measures imposed on the Syrian people, acts that Damascus claims will not achieve the U.S. goal of breaking the Syrian people's will to resist.
teleSUR, Damascus, Syria.
And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For telesur English, I'm Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.